One, two, one, two, one, two, one, two, one, two. And our very special guest. Whoops. Oh. And my very special guest on Groovin today is a legend from the 60s, Dave Berry. In fact, I know you as Bill Grundy from Sheffield, going back in time. And if I may say so, you are one of the superstars of the 60s in many ways, because your hits, just to refresh the memory of our listener, Mama, Memphis, Tennessee, My Baby Left Me, Crying, The Crying Game, Baby It's You, and Little Things and so on, were world hits. In fact, just about every country except the USA. Am I right in saying that?
That's right, yes. We had sort of a good success in Europe. I think I was one of the strange artists in the 60s where my success was basically Europe and the Scandinavian countries, and I was not really, didn't really do very much at all in America and, sort of the Australia and things like that.
What makes you rather unique is that you had around you probably the first supergroup, as I would say. You had Jimmy Page in your second record, wasn't it? He actually was lead guitar, My Baby Left Me.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones and Big Jim Sullivan, who went on to play, I'm sure that most people know, with sort of Led Zeppelin, and Big Jim Sullivan went on to play with sort of likes of Tom Jones and many of the fine American artists. Jimmy Page at that time was 19 years old when he was starting doing session work for Decca, and I think as in the very early days in '64 we were aware that he was a sort of a outstanding player, especially for 19 years old.
I read an article in Record Collector magazine that said you really sort of waited till you got the right group around you at the time, though you did have, of course, the Cruisers then.
Yeah, well, again, my career over 20 years has been sort of split in half, really. I've never actually recorded with my touring band, and I've always had excellent young musicians backing me, sort of my live shows. But I think why it started in the early days was my band originally, the original Cruiser, they did have a lot of problems in the studios, getting the sound which is required, because it is a different technique in the studios, and sadly they never really put it together in the studio. So
that happened to Ringo Starr as well, so it can't be all bad, can it?
Yeah, well, and then we just we found this session team, and we would wait for them. We would actually have a session booked, and we would think, well, let's wait for the best, which I believe is the best way to work.
Now, looking at the first hit, Memphis, Tennessee, which was a Chuck Berry number, did you take your name from Chuck Berry, Dave Berry? I mean, was that how it was derived from?
It was, yeah. In the late 50s, when I was just leaving school and becoming interested in music, it might sound very strange now to people, but Chuck Berry was really unheard of, apart from musicians in Liverpool and Newcastle and London and Sheffield, which is my hometown. We'd really got the market to ourselves, and no one had really heard these wonderful songs about cars and women and DJs. I mean, we didn't know what a DJ was in sort of like 1960 in Britain.
I think most people with a dinner jacket, didn't they?
That's right. We just sort of knew David Jacobs and Brian Matthews and there was no commercial station or anything. But
all frightfully very posh. But your second record, in fact, this when I first met you, I met you at a gig in Southport when I used to have a rock and roll band, was My Baby Left Me, which was an Arthur Big Boy Crudup number, if I'm right in saying that.
That's right, and again, I think he was one of the best R&B artists, and he influenced sort of Elvis and virtually everybody. I mean, there's 2 or 3 tracks on the very first Elvis Presley records on Sun, which were complete copies of Arthur Big Boy Crudup, and sadly, he never really got the recognition that he deserved, really.
We recut some of his records on RCA much later, of course, but the original ones we've never actually seen in the UK. We've had to import those from the USA. Now, if I can move on a little bit, you had The Crying Game, which was a major hit worldwide, particularly in Europe. Didn't make it in the USA, regrettably, but made it, as you say, in other countries, which made the top 5 in the United Kingdom and made number 1 in several other countries. And the gimmick, if I may use that, with the greatest respect, the gimmick of the glove and the sort of leather gear, long before the likes of Michael Jackson, where did that come from?
Well, I've always believed in theatre in rock and roll, lighting and theatre and effects, and maybe that I was just into that a little earlier than quite a few more people. I mean, I used to carry a particular lighting guy with me all the time, and we would work. We worked with the lights and everything, which again was unheard of in the early 60s.
It was way ahead of its time.
And I do believe it now. I mean, for me, to watch, the people doing the videos now, that's everything I've dreamed of in music. I just wish now I could actually be sort of recording on a regular basis and be involved in making videos, because that's what I would really be interested in.
Yeah. Do you have any other business other than music, or are you totally involved with music?
I'm totally involved in music. I think again from the early days I always wanted to be, and I never saw it as just a passing thing. I remember seeing Mick Jagger on Whistle Test tonight, actually, whatever date is today, I forget the days.
Yeah, I think we're about the 9th of April.
And he was saying that he never really expected it to last, he thought maybe like 2 or 3 years, then that would be it. But I always sort of, even before I made records, I would sort of like sit and watch Elector's Corner and the blues bands playing around the pubs in Sheffield, and I'd got visions then of, if nothing happened in the music business as a pop singer, I would like to sort of move to London and possibly play with some of the jazz and blues bands at that time.
Well, you actually played with Mick Jagger and the Stones on 2 or 3 of the tours, didn't you?
Yeah, we toured in the 60s with the Stones and the Ronettes and all the early sort of early bands, in all our formative years, really, from 64 to 67.
Of the British groups, who was your favourite, would you say, of the 60s?
Strangely enough, I was never really... I don't really have any favourite British bands. The American bands were my favourites. I mean, Bob Dylan, Johnny Cash, the early rock and roll people. I think John Lennon said that nobody's really ever been able to recreate or get the excitement of Little Richard and people like that. You must read the book, people, of the book Little Richard.
Oh, I've just finished it, yeah. I mean, what a fantastic book. But we talked about that in Groovin the other week. Now, moving on a little bit in your career, I remember Mama was a massive hit for you. And then suddenly, nothing. And the follow-up to it was Picture Me Gone, wasn't it? Now, I didn't particularly like Picture Me Gone, and I can remember it to this day, and I think I was not alone there. It was sort of a slight change. I mean, what actually happened after Mama? Because you had sort of like, was it 9 consecutive chart entries then? And then along came this record.
Well, I think what happens is exactly, I don't think the music business changes so much, in as much as when a record producer, I mean, I'd been working with Mike Smith at Decca from the very beginning, and Mike Smith left Decca. He'd been my A&R man, producer, and found the material, and we talked about it. And in about '68, he left Decca to go with CBS, and we never really got the interest from Decca Records from Mike Smith leaving. And at that time I didn't know this, but looking back on it now, I think possibly the change of producers never really worked for me. And so I just went on really to be more involved in live shows.
I think the thing is with you, Dave, is that you are an actor you're seen on stage. You're very much a stage show, as it were, because I mean you really do care about the way that it's the presentation of it and the theatre of sort of popular music. Now you haven't exactly sort of been quiet, because you did some work in the late '70s with Chas and Dave, as I recall.
I was in the studios with Chas and Dave and different musicians just before Chas and Dave broke big.
Right.
Again, nothing happened with that session, and we had somewhere in some record company. There's about 5 or 6 tracks that Chas and Dave wrote for me, and I recorded.
Is there anything we're going to look forward to seeing from you at all? Is there any records that we might see in the next year or so? Have you any plans at all, music-wise?
Well, I've got 1 or 2 things coming up. We've just been doing some excellent gigs with a sort of post-punk band, Alan Clayson and the Argonauts. We've done some things,
yes.
and Alan's sort of quite a good writer, complete lunatic, and we really have some interest now in maybe recording some of his material.
Well, I look forward to that. And you've got gigs coming up down in London, the Hammersmith Odeon, and you're playing.
Yeah, week Sunday we're doing Hammersmith Odeon with the big 60s package with the Trogs and all the other wild and weird people from the 60s.
And at the Guildhall, Preston, is that tomorrow night?
That's tomorrow night. That's along with Dave D and the Blue Jeans and people like that.
Because Dave D's out and about again now, isn't he?
Yes, and Brian Poole's now not sort of cutting meat up anymore.
No, we saw him recently. He was at our local theatre here. Finally, of all the tracks you've recorded, what's your favourite record? Because we'll give it a spin right now. I mean, it's difficult question that, but what's your favourite track? See if we've got it in the library.
Well, I think that as a quick one, so to speak, which I've always liked quick ones, I would think that one that Ray Davies wrote for me way back in the 60s, which again was sort of a minor hit in England, and it was a monster over in Europe for us. That's one called This Strange Effect.
Right, This Strange Effect from Dave Berry. Thanks very much, Dave.